The galaxy voted to expel Earth. Humanity chose to forge a new future. The chamber was enormous. It could hold 10,000 beings from 1,000 different worlds. And on that day, it was full. Every seat was taken. Every screen was live. Every species that had ever called itself a member of the Interstellar Union had sent someone to watch. They had come to see history. They had come to watch a verdict be delivered against the smallest, youngest, and most troublesome species in the known galaxy, humanity. The Grand Galactic Council Chamber sat at the heart of the Union's home station, a massive ring-shaped structure orbiting a blue dwarf star. The walls were made of a transparent alloy that showed the stars outside in perfect clarity. The ceiling stretched so high that it disappeared into artificial cloud. The floor was made of polished dark stone that reflected the lights above it, like a mirror. It was built to remind every species that entered it, you are part of something greater than yourself. Ambassador Daon walked through those doors alone. He was a human man in his late 40s, with a sharp face, short dark hair going gray at the sides, and eyes that had seen too many meetings in too many cold rooms to be surprised by anything anymore. He wore a simple dark suit. No medals, no decorations, no flag pin. Just a man and his clothes, and the weight of 8 billion people sitting on his shoulders like a stone. He did not look nervous. He walked to the center podium, the single raised platform where the accused stood during a formal council session. Around him, in tiered rows that curved upward like a coliseum, sat the representatives of 847 civilizations. Some were tall and thin. Some were broad and heavy. Some had 4 arms. Some communicated only through color changes in their skin. A few had been traveling the stars before humanity had learned to write. They all looked at him the same way, like he was already gone. The session had been going on for 6 days. 6 days of testimony, of recorded incidents, of carefully prepared arguments about why Earth and its colonies were a danger to the peace of the galaxy. The charges had been read aloud on the first day, and they were long. Humanity had violated trade agreements. Humanity had ignored border protocols on 14 separate occasions. Humanity had reverse-engineered alien technology without licensing agreements. Humanity had sent military ships into disputed zones without clearance. Humanity had, on 3 recorded occasions, fired first. And then there were the unrecorded things, the things that were harder to prove, but that everyone in that chamber knew were true. That humans were strange, that they did not react to danger the way other species did. That, instead of retreating, they leaned in. Instead of calculating the odds and standing down, they calculated the odds, found them terrible, and attacked anyway. That they had a word, a concept, called spite, and they were capable of doing things simply because someone told them they could not. The Union found that deeply unsettling. The head of the council, a tall 4-armed being named Voss of the Cathara people, read the final summary in a flat, rehearsed voice. He had done this before. He would do it again. His voice carried no cruelty and no kindness, just procedure. The Interstellar Union, in accordance with Article 77 of the Union Charter, has conducted a full review of the species designated as humanity, originating from the 3rd planet of the Sol system. After 6 days of deliberation, a vote has been taken. The result is as follows. 847 civilizations held their breath in whatever way their biology allowed. 831 votes in favor of expulsion. 9 votes against, 7 abstentions. Daon did not move. Humanity is hereby removed from the Interstellar Union, effective immediately. All trade agreements are suspended. All communication relays provided by the Union to human territories will be deactivated within 30 standard days. All Union military protection extended to human space is withdrawn as of this moment. Human ships are not to enter Union space without prior authorization, which will require a formal application process taking no less than 1 standard year to process. Voss set down his paper. He looked at Dayon with something that might have been sympathy, or might have been relief. "Ambassador, you have the right to make a final statement." Dayon stood at the podium for a moment, without speaking. He looked up at the rows and rows of alien faces watching him. He looked at the stars through the transparent walls. He took one slow breath. Then he reached into his jacket pocket, pulled out a small folded piece of paper, opened it, and read from it in a calm and level voice. "On behalf of Earth and all human territories, I have heard the decision of this council. I will transmit it to my government. I have nothing further to say." He folded the paper, put it back in his pocket, and walked out. The chamber erupted the moment the doors closed behind him. 38 light-years away, in a secure room inside the United Earth Government building in what used to be called Seoul, Secretary General Junho watched the transmission on a wide screen, with 12 of his closest advisors. The feed was slightly delayed due to distance, but they had all stayed awake to watch it live. When the vote count appeared on screen, a few people in the room made quiet sounds. One woman put her hand over her mouth. A man near the back of the room sat down heavily in his chair. Junho said nothing for almost a full minute. Then he turned to the room and said, in a voice that was very quiet and very steady, "Close every outgoing diplomatic channel, all of them. Don't respond to anything. Don't explain anything. Don't apologize for anything." His chief of staff, a sharp-eyed woman named Rena, looked up from her tablet. "And the incoming messages? There are already 40-something coming in from Union member worlds. Some of them sound like they want to negotiate." "Let them wait," Junho said. "For how long?" He picked up his coffee cup, found it was empty, and set it back down. "Until we're ready." Nobody asked what ready meant. They all had a feeling they were going to find out. Outside the building, it was early morning. The sun was just beginning to come up over the hills, painting the sky in pale orange and gold. On a street corner below the window, a man was walking a dog. A delivery truck rolled slowly past. A light turned green, and a single car moved through an empty intersection. 8 billion people were going about their morning. Most of them had watched the vote. Most of them had felt the sting of it, the humiliation, the rejection, the cold and public declaration that they were not wanted, that they were dangerous, that the galaxy would be better without them. But something interesting was happening, in homes and offices and barracks and laboratories all across the human worlds. People were not crying. They were not begging. They were not scrambling to write letters to the council. They were getting quiet. And when humanity got quiet, it was never because they were giving up. It was because they were thinking. The galaxy voted to expel Earth. Humanity chose to forge a new future. 3 months went by, and the galaxy heard nothing from humanity. No diplomatic messages, no trade requests, no border disputes, no protests, no complaints, no emergency transmissions asking for help. The communication channels that used to carry dozens of human signals every single day went completely silent. Union monitoring stations recorded the absence and filed reports. Intelligence departments sent their analysts to look deeper, to check if the signals were simply being rerouted or encoded. They were not. Humanity had simply stopped talking to the rest of the galaxy entirely. It made everyone deeply uncomfortable. The Velhari Collective, a civilization of calm and highly logical beings who had been among the most vocal supporters of the expulsion, sent a quiet inquiry to the last known human diplomatic address. The Kethera Council, which had run the proceedings, discussed the silence in 2 separate emergency sessions. Most members concluded that humanity was simply processing its grief. Species that had been expelled before tended to go through a period of shock before eventually returning, humbled and cooperative, to request readmission. The Union had seen it happen 4 times in the last 2 centuries. They assumed it would happen again. Xenoanalyst Tara of the Velhari Collective was not so sure. She was a small, precise being with large gray eyes, and a career built on watching species behave in ways that surprised everyone else. She had spent 11 years studying humanity before the vote, and she had written 3 papers warning the Council that humans did not respond to pressure the way other species did. Now she sat in her small office, surrounded by screens full of empty data, and felt something she had not felt in a long time. She felt worried. She filed a report titled Anomalous Behavioral Silence, Species H, Sol System, and sent it up the chain. It was acknowledged and filed and never discussed. Deep inside the Kuiper Belt, at the outer edge of the solar system, where the sun was just a very bright star and the cold was absolute, a structure sat in the dark that most of the galaxy did not know existed. It was not beautiful. It was not designed to impress. It was a collection of connected modules, storage units, manufacturing bays and research labs that had been assembled quietly over the past 4 years under a project designation so boring that anyone who intercepted the budget documents would have assumed it was a mining operation. It was called Station Dowa, and it was home to 212 people. Engineer Rubin had been living there for 14 months. He was a large man with wide shoulders and permanently tired eyes, and the kind of focused mind that made other engineers both admire and slightly fear him. He had been pulled from a prestigious position at Earth's Orbital Development Authority and brought to Dowa with one instruction: build something that doesn't need anyone else. That instruction had come before the vote. The people who gave it had been thinking ahead. Wubin stood in the main engineering bay on the morning after the vote results reached Dowa. The signal took about 6 hours to travel that far, and looked at the thing his team had been building for the past year. It was large. It had taken 3 complete redesigns and the combined brainpower of 61 engineers, physicists, and material scientists to get it to the stage it was at now. It was a faster-than-light drive. Not a licensed copy of the Union-designed fold engine that every species in the galaxy used. Not a reverse-engineered version that would trigger copyright disputes and trade violations. Something entirely new. Built from first principles, using human physics, human math, and human materials. It had taken 11 years of theoretical work before the first physical component was ever manufactured. Wubin walked around it slowly, as he did every morning, checking connections and reading outputs on his handheld scanner. His assistant, a young woman named Yuli, fell into step beside him with a datapad tucked under her arm. "Got the transmission from Earth this morning," she said. "I heard. 831 to 9. I know." She was quiet for a moment. Then, "Does it change the timeline?" Wubin stopped walking. He looked at the drive for a long moment. It was not finished. They still had somewhere between 4 and 8 months of work left, depending on how the next round of tests went. They had no guarantee it would even function correctly. They had run simulations thousands of times, and the simulations said it would work, but simulations were not the same as the real thing. There was still so much that could go wrong. "No," he said, "it moves the timeline forward." Yuli looked at him. "By how much?" "We test in 60 days. She did the math quickly in her head. That meant cutting 3 stages of planned verification. That meant running parallel processes that were meant to be sequential. That meant everyone on the station working at a pace that would eat through their rest schedules and probably their sanity. She wrote it down on her datapad without saying anything else. That was one of the things Wubin valued about her. She never wasted time arguing about things that had already been decided. Back on Earth, the silence was a policy, and it was being maintained with great discipline. 49 Union member worlds had sent messages in the first week alone. Some were formal, requests to confirm the cessation of certain agreements, questions about border protocols, standard bureaucratic follow-up. Some were less formal. A few were almost sympathetic, from smaller civilizations that had abstained in the vote and seemed to feel a vague sense of guilt about it. One message, from a mid-tier trading civilization called the Porith, was practically apologetic in tone. None of them received replies. Secretary General Junho read every message himself. He had them printed out and stacked in a physical folder on his desk, something that his staff found oddly old-fashioned, but did not question. He read them carefully and set them aside, and did not respond to any of them. He spent most of his time in meetings that were not recorded and not listed on the official schedule. The people in those meetings were not the usual diplomats and ministers. They were engineers, military officers, scientists, and economists. They brought him numbers and projections and plans. He asked hard questions, and they gave honest answers. The meetings were long and often ran past midnight. What was being planned in those rooms was not a petition for readmission. It was being built the way all large things are built, piece by piece, in the dark, without announcement, while the rest of the world assumed you were sitting quietly and recovering from a loss. Outside in the corridor one evening, Rena caught a few minutes alone with Junho before the next meeting started. She had been watching him for weeks, and she had the look of someone who had a question they had been holding back. "They think we're broken," she said. "I know," Junho said. "Are we going to tell them we're not?" He looked at the door at the end of the corridor. Through it, people were already sitting down, already opening their folders, already ready to work. "No," he said, "we're going to show them." He pushed open the door and walked in, and the meeting began. Outside, the galaxy waited for humanity to come crawling back. It was going to be waiting for a very long time. The galaxy voted to expel Earth. Humanity chose to forge a new future. The Velhari scout ship was not supposed to be where it was. It had been running a long-range mapping route through a section of space that the Union had marked as sparse and commercially unviable. A polite way of saying there was nothing out there worth visiting. The route was routine work assigned to junior crew members as a way of logging flight hours without risking anything important. The two-person crew had been out for 11 days and had found exactly what the charts predicted: empty space, a few unremarkable asteroids, and a dim star with no habitable planets. Then, on the 12th day, their long-range sensors picked up something that was not on any map. The pilot, a young Velhari named Doru, almost dismissed it as an instrument error. Sensor ghosts were common in deep space. Equipment drifted. Signals bounced off debris fields and created false readings. But the reading was too consistent, too structured, and too large to be a ghost. He ran it through 3 separate diagnostic checks. Each one confirmed it. There was a station out there, a big one. He brought the ship closer slowly and carefully, running silent with minimal emissions. As they approached, more details came in. The station was not Union construction. The geometry was different, more angular, built for function over elegance. "You are currently inside human expansion space. Please identify yourself and state your purpose. You have 5 minutes to respond before we treat your presence as a hostile incursion." Doru looked at his co-pilot. His co-pilot looked back at him. They had both grown up hearing about humans. Everyone in the galaxy had, especially in the years leading up to the vote. They had heard that humans were aggressive, that they were reckless, that they were unpredictable. What Doru had not expected was how steady that voice sounded. There was no bluster in it, no performance, just a flat, practical statement of reality. He opened the comm channel with hands that were only slightly unsteady. "This is Doru of Velhari Scout Vessel VCS-94. We are on a standard mapping route. We were not aware this space was claimed. We have no hostile intent." A pause, then the same voice. "Acknowledged. Hold your position. A dock officer will guide you in." Doru looked at the station growing slowly on his screen, and had the particular feeling of someone who had stumbled into something much larger than they were prepared for. Commander Isiol met Doru in the docking bay personally. She was not what he expected. She was a human woman of medium height, with short hair pulled back severely, and the kind of posture that spoke of long years in uniform. She wore no rank insignia that Doru could read, but the way the 6 people behind her stood told him everything he needed to know about her position. She looked at him with steady dark eyes and no visible emotion, and extended her hand in a human gesture of greeting. He shook it, because he had studied enough human customs to know what it meant. "Welcome to Harang," she said. "You're the first outside visitors." Doru looked around the docking bay. People moved with purpose in every direction, carrying equipment, running checks, talking to each other in quick, efficient exchanges. The bay was clean and well lit, and everything in it looked new. It smelled of metal and machine oil, and something warm that he eventually identified as food being prepared somewhere nearby. "How long has this station been here?" he asked. "Long enough," Isul said. She walked him through the station for almost 2 hours. She showed him the common areas, the engineering sections, the docking arms where the 3 large ships were berthed. She answered his questions precisely and completely, never volunteering more than he asked, never less. She showed him the hydroponic bays where food was grown, the water reclamation systems, the power generation units. She showed him the medical bay, the schoolroom where the children of station staff were taught, the small recreation area with its mismatched furniture, and the wall covered in drawings made by those same children. What she did not show him was the weapon systems. She did not need to. He had seen enough of the station's outer hull on approach to know they were there. When the tour was done, she brought him to a small meeting room and sat across from him at a plain table with 2 cups of something hot between them. "You're going to report this," she said. It was not a question. "Yes," Doru said honestly. She nodded. "Good. Tell them exactly what you saw. Don't leave anything out." He wrapped his hands around the warm cup and looked at her. "Are you not worried about what the council will do when they find out?" Isul looked at him for a moment with something that might have been amusement, though it was quiet and brief. "No," she said. Doru's report reached the Valhari Collective's main intelligence office 8 days later, after being flagged, escalated, and reviewed at 4 separate levels of command. From there it went to the Union Council with a priority classification that had not been used in over a decade. Within 48 hours, every major member civilization had received a copy. The reaction was not calm. 831 civilizations had voted to expel humanity, on the assumption that removing them from the Union would weaken them, would cut them off from the technology and trade networks that supported their expansion. The assumption had been that humans, like every species before them, needed the Union. That without access to Union resources, they would contract, slow down, and eventually ask to come back. The scout report showed a station that had not contracted. It showed ships that were not in any Union catalog. It showed a population that was not afraid, not desperate, and not asking for anything. And it showed one more thing, buried in the technical appendix of Doru's report, the engine signature of the 3 docked ships. The Union's best analysts ran the data 3 times before they accepted the conclusion. Those ships were not using a fold engine. Whatever was moving those vessels through space, it was something the Union had never seen before. It was something humans had built themselves, from nothing, outside of any licensed framework, without any alien help. In the council chamber, Voss of the Cathara read Doru's report, and then sat very still, for a long time. The vote had been meant to be a punishment. It had been meant to be a lesson. It had been meant to show humanity that the galaxy operated by certain rules, and that species who could not follow those rules would be left behind. Instead, it had cut every leash humanity had ever been operating under. And now something was running free in the dark between the stars, and it was building, and it was not asking permission, and it was not afraid. For the first time since the vote, Voss felt something he had not expected to feel. He felt afraid. The galaxy voted to expel Earth. Humanity chose to forge a new future. 1 year after the expulsion, humanity had 14 stations. Not 14 outposts, not 14 small clusters of emergency shelters or temporary research facilities. 14 fully operational, independently sustained, permanently staffed stations spread across a wide band of space that no Union member had mapped in detail, because no Union member had ever thought that space was worth the effort. It was remote, it was cold, it was far from every established trade route. It had nothing obvious to offer. That was exactly why humanity had chosen it. Each station had been built the same way Harang had been built, quietly, practically, with no wasted space and no wasted material, attached to asteroids or positioned near small resource-rich bodies that could be mined without any Union permits. Together, the 14 stations formed a loose network that could share power, personnel, supplies, and information. They were not yet a civilization in the traditional sense, but they were the skeleton of one. Captain Harim commanded the long-range exploration fleet operating out of the network's largest hub, a station called Sori. He was a lean, serious man, with large hands, and a habit of speaking less than people expected from someone in his position. He had spent 17 years in Earth's Space Command before the expulsion, running deep space survey missions. He was good at it in the way that people who are built for a thing are good at it. Not through effort, but through nature. His fleet was not large. 4 ships, but they were the fastest human vessels ever built. Each one fitted with the new drive that Wubin's team had finished testing 6 months ago. It worked better than the simulations had predicted, which was not the normal direction for real-world results to go. Harim had taken his fleet out to a distance that would have taken a standard fold engine 3 weeks to cover. His ships had done it in 9 days. He sent a single transmission back to Sori when they arrived. Drive confirmed functional at range. Continuing survey. Then he went further. Back inside the Union, things were not going well. The discovery of Station Harang had been unsettling. The subsequent mapping of the human station network, done by 3 separate Union intelligence teams over a period of 4 months, had been alarming. But the thing that truly broke the Council's sense of control was a document. It was not a weapon. It was not a military action. It was a research paper. Scientist Noel had spent 9 years working in Earth's Energy Research Division before the expulsion. She was quiet, methodical, and had an almost frightening ability to hold large and complex problems in her head simultaneously. She had published 12 papers in her career, all of them well regarded in narrow academic circles. None of them had caused any trouble. Her 13th paper was different. It described in clear and practical terms a method of generating energy from a natural property of space itself, a phenomenon that required no fuel, no refining, no planetary resources of any kind. The method was elegant, and the math was correct. Any civilization with basic physics knowledge could verify it independently, and many did, within days of the paper's release. The paper also included in its final section a short historical note. The Union's Central Energy Consortium, a body controlled by 7 of the oldest and most powerful civilizations in the galaxy, had discovered this same method 230 years ago. The documentation proving this was attached as an appendix. The consortium had suppressed it because free, unlimited energy would have destroyed the fuel trade that supported a significant portion of the Union's economic structure. They had buried the research, bought the silence of the scientists involved, and continued selling fuel to every civilization in the galaxy for 2.5 centuries. Noel had found the original documentation in a Union academic archive 3 years before the expulsion. She had verified it cross-referenced it, and then waited. She released the paper on a public frequency accessible to every civilization in the galaxy simultaneously, routed through human communication relays that the Union no longer had the authority to shut down. She did not ask permission. She did not notify anyone in advance. She simply published it and let it go. The response was immediate and severe. 6 planets filed formal complaints against the Energy Consortium within 72 hours. On a mid-sized world called Perrin, where the population had been paying some of the highest fuel costs in the Union for decades, protests filled the streets within a week. 2 other worlds suspended their consortium membership agreements pending investigation. A small Outer Rim civilization that had been considering Union membership for the past decade quietly withdrew its application. The Council convened an emergency session. The debate was long and extremely loud. Terra of the Velhari sat in the observer gallery and watched the chaos below with an expression that was very close to satisfaction. She had filed 3 reports warning the Council about humanity. She pulled out her notepad and began writing a 4th report, even though she already knew it would be ignored again. She wrote it anyway, because she believed in documentation, and because she thought that someday someone might want to know exactly when the galaxy should have paid more attention. In the 14 stations of the human network, life was hard and busy, and full of the particular energy that comes from people who believe they are building something that matters. The work was constant. The stations needed maintenance that never ended. The new drive technology needed refinement at every level. Food production was stable, but not yet comfortable. Children did their lessons in rooms that still smelled of fresh sealant. Off-shift workers slept in bunks that were practical rather than comfortable. But something was happening across the network that Junho had been watching carefully. 4 Union member civilizations had made quiet contact through unofficial channels. Not through their governments, through private traders, through individual scientists, through small commercial ships that arrived at the edge of human space and asked, carefully, if there was any possibility of doing business. These were civilizations that had voted for the expulsion. 2 of them had been among the loudest voices in support of it. Junho sat in his office on Earth and read each approach carefully. He discussed them with Rena and a small team of advisors. He made decisions about which ones to respond to and how, and what to offer and what not to offer. He was not in a hurry. He had learned in the last year that patience was one of the most powerful tools available to him. The 4 civilizations that broke the embargo and traded with humanity got access to the new energy technology. Not the full paper. Noel had already released that to everyone, but the engineering specifications to actually build the generators, the detailed work, the hard part. In exchange, they provided manufacturing materials that humanity still needed and could not yet produce independently. It was a fair trade. It was trade conducted entirely outside the Union's framework, without Union oversight, without Union fees, without Union permission. Harin's fleet was 3 months into its survey when he sent his 2nd transmission back to Sori. This one was longer than the first. He had found something. A system of 4 planets, 2 of them with conditions that were not comfortable for humans, but were survivable with the right equipment, and one with an atmosphere that initial scans suggested might be closer to Earth-compatible than anything yet discovered. He attached the coordinates and the scan data, and ended the transmission with a single line that was not standard survey language. There is more out here than they ever let us see. Rena read the transmission in Junho's office, out loud, while Junho stood at the window, looking at the city below. When she finished, he was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "How many ships can we get to those coordinates in the next 6 months?" She checked her tablet. "If we pull from the network and push the production schedule, 3, maybe 4. "Do it," he said. The galaxy had spent a year waiting for humanity to shrink. Instead, humanity had grown and was still growing, and showed absolutely no signs of stopping. The galaxy voted to expel Earth. Humanity chose to forge a new future. The Council did not send an invitation. That would have required admitting too much. Instead, they sent a message through one of the 4 civilizations that had been quietly trading with humanity. Worded carefully so that it did not look like a request and did not sound like an apology, but was, unmistakably, both. The message said that the Council was convening a special session to discuss the current state of relations between the Interstellar Union and unaffiliated human territories, and that if humanity wished to send a representative, a seat would be made available. Junho read the message twice. He handed it to Rena without comment. She read it and set it on the desk. "They want you to come to them," she said. "They want to feel like they're still in charge of the room," he said. "Are you going?" she asked. Then he made a decision that surprised almost everyone around him. He did not send a minister or a diplomat or a carefully selected representative with a prepared speech. He contacted Ambassador Dayon directly, for the first time since the night of the expulsion, and asked him one question. Dayon answered yes before Junho finished asking it. The council chamber was full again. Same chamber, same tiered rows, same transparent walls showing the stars outside. But the mood was different this time. The confident weight of authority that had filled the room 18 months ago was thinner now, worn in places, patched over with careful formality that did not quite hide the anxiety underneath. Word of the session had spread. Word of everything had spread. The energy paper, the 14 stations, the new drive, the 4 defecting trade partners, the exploration fleet that was charting territory the Union had never bothered to map. All of it had been discussed, debated, argued over, and worried about in every council chamber and government office, from one side of the Union to the other. And now, a holographic image of Ambassador Dayon appeared at the center of the chamber. He looked exactly the same as the last time he had stood there. Same sharp face, same gray at the temples, same simple dark suit. He had aged perhaps a year in the lines around his eyes. He stood with his hands loose at his sides and looked up at the rows of watching faces with the same expression he had worn the day the vote was read. Calm, aware, and completely unmoved by the size of the room. Voss of the Kethera opened the session with a formal greeting and a short summary of the purpose of the meeting. He was more careful with his words than he had been at the expulsion session. He spoke about mutual interests and opportunities for dialogue, and the evolving situation in Outer Rim space. He did not use the word apology. He did not come close to it. When he finished, he looked at the hologram. Ambassador Dayon, the Council welcomes your presence and invites your response. Dayon did not consult any notes. He did not read from anything. He spoke in the same steady conversational tone he might have used in a meeting of 20 people rather than a chamber of thousands. The Interstellar Union, he said, expelled a species it was afraid of. You decided that the safest thing to do with something unpredictable was to remove it from your structure and hope that removing it from your structure would make it weaker. You were wrong about that. Not because humanity is special in some way that defies logic, but because the thing that made us unpredictable, the thing that worried you, was never something the Union gave us. You cannot take away something you never provided. The chamber was silent. We are not here to rejoin the Union, Dayon continued. We are not here to negotiate readmission, or to appeal the vote, or to ask for anything that was taken from us. We are here because you asked us to come, and we came because we are willing to talk. But talking has conditions. He reached into his jacket, the same jacket, or one exactly like it, and held up a single document. Even in holographic form, the gesture carried weight. This is the Free World Accord. It is a framework for cooperation between humanity and any civilization that wishes to engage with us on equal terms, outside the structure of the Union, without Union oversight, or Union fees, or Union permission. It covers trade, research sharing, mutual exploration, and a basic set of agreements about how we treat each other's ships and people. It is not complicated. It does not require you to leave the Union. It only requires that when you deal with us, you deal with us as an equal." He set the document down on the podium that existed in the physical chamber, placed there by a staff member on Daon's instruction before the session began. "We will leave it there," he said. "Anyone who wants to sign it knows where to find us." Then he looked at Voss directly. "We are not what you voted on 18 months ago. We were already changing before the vote happened. You accelerated it. I want to be honest with you about that, because I think honesty is more useful than pretending you had no effect. You had an effect. It was just not the one you intended." Voss, for the first time in a long career of council sessions, did not have an immediate reply. 42 civilizations signed the Free World Accord within 7 days. Not all of them were small. 3 of the 42 were mid-tier powers with significant fleets and established economies. 2 of them had voted for the expulsion. They signed quietly, through back channels, before the official announcement, and when the list was published, the council spent an entire emergency session just processing the fact that it had happened. Terra of the Velhari read the list of signatories in her office and felt something settle in her that had been unsettled for a long time. She wrote a final report, her 4th, on the subject of humanity, and this one she did not send up any chain of command. She published it directly to the Union's open academic network, where anyone could read it. The title was simple: What We Could Have Done Differently. On Earth's orbital platform, Secretary General Junho stood at the wide observation window and looked at the planet below. It was late in the platform's rotation cycle, and the curve of the Earth below was partly in shadow, the city lights of half a dozen continents visible as soft golden clusters against the dark. He had been standing there for a while, long enough that the coffee in his cup had gone cold. Rena came to stand beside him. She had a tablet in her hand, as she always did, but she was not looking at it. 42, she said. 42, he agreed. Harim's fleet found 2 more candidate systems last week. I know. Wubin's team thinks they can increase the drive's range by another 30% before the end of the year. I know that too. She was quiet for a moment, looking at the planet. Then she said, when they voted, they thought it was the end of something. Junho looked at the lights below. All those millions of lit windows, all those people moving through their lives, working and arguing and building and dreaming and doing all the things that humans did, that the rest of the galaxy had found so difficult to categorize, so impossible to predict. Just not the end they were thinking of. Below the platform, Earth turned slowly in the dark, the same as it always had, patient and enormous, and full of people who had been told, very clearly, that they were not wanted, and had decided, very quietly, that that was someone else's problem. Somewhere beyond the edge of mapped space, Harim's fleet was moving through a system no other civilization had ever named. Somewhere in the Kuiper Belt, Wubin's engineers were running calculations that would change how fast a human ship could move. Somewhere in the stations, children who had never known any other home were growing up with no memory of a galaxy that had excluded them. Only a galaxy that was slowly, undeniably, becoming theirs. The expulsion had been meant as a door closing. Humanity had walked through it, looked around at the open space on the other side, and started building. That was the thing the galaxy had never understood, and was only now beginning to learn. You could not punish a species out of its nature. You could only find out what that nature was made of.